Hi there, I'm Annalise, and my sister called me a parasite, right after I paid off our parents' $250,000 mortgage. Yeah, I saved the family home and somehow still became the villain. But that wasn't the worst part. The betrayal went deeper, paperwork forged, voices silenced, and a will rewritten behind closed doors. Why would a family go that far to erase someone they once called their own? What time is it where you're watching this? Are you alone, or did someone send this to you for a reason? Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever been treated like an outsider in your own family. 17 years is a long time to pretend you don't care. Long enough to build a life, raise a child, forget how the front steps creak under weight you never wanted to carry. But it took just 3 seconds after the door opened to remember why I left. Noah stood beside me, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket, eyes flicking between the peeling doorframe and my face. He rang the bell before I could stop him. I didn't have the stomach to touch it. When the door opened, my mother blinked as if trying to place me. Then she smiled, too quickly, and dropped her gaze to Noah. "You must be Noah. My, aren't you a handsome one?" She pulled him into an unsolicited hug. Over his shoulder, she nodded at me. "Annalise?" The house smelled like lemon cleaner and unspoken resentment. The air was thick with things never said and apologies never offered. Gerald looked up from the living room, thinner than I remembered, his paper folded neatly in his lap. "There's my grandson." Lunch was already plated when we sat down. Roast beef, cold rolls, and the same pattern of silence I remembered from my teenage years. The moment stretched, heavy and dull. I broke it with what I thought would be a peace offering. "I paid off the mortgage last week," I said casually, slicing through the roast with robotic precision. "It's done. The house is yours again." Delilah put down her fork. Eleanor didn't look up. Gerald cleared his throat but said nothing. Delilah leaned back. "Some people pay a check and think it buys them respect." I looked at her. She smiled. "Parasites write big checks too, you know." Noah dropped his fork. It clattered against the china like a gavel. No one said a word. Eleanor dabbed her mouth with a napkin. Gerald busied himself with pouring more water. I didn't flinch, but something in my chest did. "Delilah," Eleanor murmured, voice light. "That's enough. You're just tired." And there it was. Not a correction, not a defense, a brush off. I looked at my father. He studied his plate. I smiled without teeth. "Excuse me," I said quietly, folding my napkin. "I'll show Noah the guest room." It hadn't changed. Same beige walls, same dented dresser. A place meant to hold someone temporarily. Someone they didn't plan to keep. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the deed transfer email. Legal, clean, binding. The only proof I'd ever meant something to this house. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a book he brought in his backpack. The walls felt closer than they should have. Downstairs, Delilah laughed, loud, carefree, like she hadn't just spit on what I'd built. Noah looked up. "Mom, why did she call you that?" I stared at the phone screen. "Because," I said slowly, "I stopped being useful and started being in the way." He didn't ask again. The house was quieter than I remembered, quieter than it had any right to be after what had happened at the lunch table. The kind of silence that didn't soothe. It hummed beneath the walls like a low-level threat. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, each rotation scraping past my nerves. Noah had fallen asleep quickly. Kids are good at shutting things out until they can't anymore. I wasn't so lucky. I slipped out of the guest room and wandered the hallway barefoot. My fingers brushed against the wall, pausing at the gallery of photos I used to pass without thought. The largest frame sat perfectly centered, a professionally lit portrait of Delilah, Eleanor, Gerald, and Delilah's twin daughters. Everyone beaming, coordinated outfits, even the family dog made it in. I wasn't there. They'd updated it annually. I knew because Delilah posted them online, smiling captions like, "Home is where love lives," and "Family first." And I was always the caption that got cropped. I stared until the image blurred. Maybe I had imagined I was still part of them in some fractured way. But the wall told the truth Eleanor never had the courage to say. I'd been erased. 16 years ago, I stood in this hallway in a cap and gown, holding my high school diploma, asking for a picture with both my parents. Mom had said the lighting was bad. The next week, I told her I'd be moving to Texas. You always think you're better than this town, she'd snapped. She didn't mean it as a compliment. I walked down to the living room, still haunted by the smile Delilah wore earlier, self-satisfied, sharp-edged. The credenza drawer stuck for a moment before sliding open with a groan. Inside, an accordion stack of old mail, yellowing at the edges. I shuffled through bills, clipped coupons, and then stopped. My handwriting. My name on the envelope. The return address was from Austin, postmarked 2007. I'd sent it 3 months after I left. Inside was a letter I no longer remembered writing. It was unopened. She had never even cared enough to pretend. I didn't need to read it to know how desperate it probably was. Me trying to reach out before I learned to stop. I stood holding the letter like it was made of glass. Then I dropped it back in the drawer. Mom? Noah's voice came from the doorway, small, tentative. I turned quickly, wiped my face before he could see too much. Why are you crying? I crouched down, touched his hair. Because some people only love you when you stay small. He nodded, not fully understanding, but close enough. We walked back to the guest room in silence, and that was the moment I stopped hoping they'd change. We spent the morning outside, pretending. I trimmed the overgrown roses in silence while Noah drew chalk outlines of space creatures on the patio stones. The air smelled like damp soil and burnt toast, and every creak of the porch swing reminded me how thin this truce had become. It was easier to be outside, away from Eleanor's darting glances and Gerald's empty silences. Delilah hadn't made an appearance yet. I counted that as a small victory. But victory, as I'd learned, never lasted long in this house. She came out holding a smoothie like a trophy, all casual strut and high-gloss manipulation. She perched on the steps, watching Noah color in silence. That's cute, she said finally. Guess parasites breed parasites. I stopped mid-cut, my hand clenched around the shears. Eleanor, watering a pot of dying lavender nearby, didn't look up, but I heard her laugh. Not loud, just enough. Noah looked at me, then at her, then back down at his chalk. I stood slowly, heart punching against my ribs. Not now, I told myself. Not here, not in front of him. Delilah smirked, took another sip, and strolled inside. Noah didn't say a word, but his chalk stayed untouched. I took him inside 15 minutes later, told him to read in my old room. I locked myself in the guest bathroom and let the faucet run. Cold water numbed my palms, my face, my breath. If she comes after me, fine, but not him, never him. That night, after we'd gone through our usual bedtime rhythm, brushing teeth, double-checking the nightlight, a half-hearted story, I tucked the blanket around him. I turned to go. Mom? His voice was small, hesitant. I looked back. Are we not wanted here? The question dropped into my chest like a stone. I didn't answer right away. He wasn't accusing. He wasn't hurt. He was adapting, the way I had. Once. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled him close. You belong wherever I am, I whispered. He nodded, burying his face into my side. 16 years ago, I'd asked the same question. But I'd never heard that answer. Later, lying in the dark, I stared at the ceiling fan again. My thoughts didn't spiral this time. They sharpened. I thought I could stay neutral, but I can't. If they hurt him, they'll lose me again. For good this time. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new email. Subject: Transfer Document Review, Property Authorization. I sat up. My eyes narrowed. They weren't just pushing me out. They were trying to erase me. 2 days passed with manufactured calm. The kind where everyone's smiles feel half a beat too slow, and every offer to help sounds rehearsed. Gerald napped most of the time. Eleanor busied herself in the kitchen, and Delilah acted like she'd been crowned Queen of Compassion. That afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and froze. Eleanor and Delilah were huddled over a pile of paperwork. Delilah's voice was low, syrupy. It's just routine, insurance stuff. I'll handle it, don't stress. Eleanor looked up, startled. It's nothing, sweetheart, just some forms Delilah brought over. I glanced down. I knew that format. Legal spacing, notarial seal spot, a full power of attorney. They didn't even try to hide it. They never expect you to read the fine print, I thought, if they still see you as the disappointment. That night, while the house creaked in its sleep, I crept into the study. The desk drawer opened with a tired sigh. Beneath a folder of water bills and old coupons, I found it. The document. Not insurance. Not even close. It was complete power of attorney, financial, medical, and property rights. Signed by Eleanor, dated last week. Her handwriting was shaky, uneven, but real. I copied it, scanned it into my phone, and emailed it to Isaac in Austin. His reply came back in under 3 minutes. Get evidence. Start recording. Now. The next morning, I poured coffee with a smile. Delilah was in full caretaker mode, offering to take Mom to the pharmacy, bring in groceries, give Annalise a break. I smiled and handed her the keys. I also installed a recorder under the guest room lamp that night. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was focused. That evening, standing just inside the back door, I heard her voice. Casual, breezy, soaked in certainty. We can move fast once the POA is in. Flip it before New Year's. Then laughter. She doesn't even know the house is already listed privately. I closed the door. Quietly. Slowly. Now I knew. She wasn't just trying to cut me out. She was selling the ground beneath their feet. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed while Noah snored softly beside me, wrapped in my old quilt like he belonged here more than I ever had. I opened my laptop, titled the document, Emergency Estate Intervention Plan, typed 2 lines before stopping. You protect the people you love, even when they choose the wrong person. I hit save. Sunday lunch smelled like rosemary and rehearsed civility. The table was set too precisely, the napkins folded in that way Delilah did when she wanted to pretend everything was polished. She'd been strangely generous all morning, pouring tea for Eleanor, slicing extra lemons for Gerald's water, complimenting Noah's posture of all things, which only made the air tighter. False calm was worse than no calm at all. I chewed slowly, watching Gerald struggle with the roast beef. His hands trembled, failing to cut clean through. Eleanor waved off the concern. He's fine, just a little tired. Delilah speared a carrot and turned to me. Since you're so invested now, maybe you'd like to start handling the repairs. New water heater's not going to pay for itself. I already covered the mortgage, I said quietly. Her laugh rang louder than it needed to. Oh, right, our savior. I felt the tension in my jaw before I registered I was clenching. Delilah continued. We should all thank you properly. How about a plaque on the wall? To our generous parasite. The fork slipped from my hand. Gerald's face went pale. Then his fingers curled in, his shoulders jolted, and he collapsed against the table with a thud that silenced everything. Eleanor screamed. Delilah lunged theatrically toward him, shouting, What did you say to him? What the hell did you just do? I froze. She was pointing at me. I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't moved, but everyone was staring now. I backed up. Noah stood halfway down the stairs, his face frozen. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. The paramedics did what they always do. Questions, monitors, tones I couldn't follow. Delilah hovered like a grieving widow, recounting the events to a neighbor with a shaking hand and a voice loud enough to reach the sidewalk. She was pushing him, emotionally, like always. He's too old for that kind of stress. Eleanor didn't correct her. I opened my mouth to speak, but the look my mother gave me said it all. Not now, not ever. That night I sat on the edge of the guest bed with my hands clenched. Noah knocked once, then entered without a word. He held out his phone. I was filming Grandpa for a school project, he said. I didn't tell you. I stared at him. You should see this. The footage showed the whole thing. The conversation, Delilah's passive-aggressive venom, my silence, my composure, Gerald collapsing mid-bite, and then Delilah's eyes flicking not to him, but directly at the camera before she moved. My breath caught. Sometimes truth doesn't need a voice, just a lens. I emailed the video to Isaac. Subject, insurance. Saved a copy to 2 external drives, uploaded one to the cloud. She didn't just try to make me the villain, I whispered to myself. She was willing to weaponize him to do it. Noah had already curled up under the blanket. I pressed a kiss to his forehead and turned off the light. The next morning, the house was colder. Eleanor didn't speak during breakfast. Gerald was resting, stable but quiet. Delilah strolled into the kitchen, the same too sweet tone in her voice. Just be careful how you speak next time. Dad's not strong. I looked up from my coffee. Neither are you, I said. And I have it all saved. Her smile twitched, just for a second. Gerald moved slower now. He didn't complain, but his steps said more than his mouth ever did. Most of his days were spent in the recliner, flipping through half-read papers he no longer processed. Delilah brought him tea like she'd invented caretaking. Eleanor kept a permanent, polite distance from me, as if guilt might rub off. I offered to help, organize medications, sort insurance files, just be useful. Eleanor declined. Delilah has it handled, she said, her smile too tight to be warm. That smile used to sting. Now, it just confirmed what I already knew. From the hallway, I heard muffled voices behind Gerald's study door. I froze. We'll make sure the house goes to the right person, Delilah was saying. You need stability, Mom. You can't rely on people who blow in and out. Silence. Then, I suppose you're right. At dinner, Eleanor didn't look at me. Not once. The next morning, the printer tray held a single sheet. Fresh ink, warm paper. My name wasn't on it, not even as a footnote. A new will, signed by Eleanor, leaving everything, property, accounts, control to Delilah. I stared at the page like it might dissolve if I blinked hard enough. It didn't. I didn't storm into the kitchen. I didn't throw accusations across the table. I saved the file, closed the drawer, and walked out. I saved their house, I whispered as I passed Noah in the hallway. I was never saving a home. Later, Noah asked if we were leaving soon. Not yet, I told him, but maybe soon. That night, Gerald dropped a folder as he tried to rise from his chair. I knelt to help him. In the jacket pocket he'd laid across the couch, a folded page stuck out, familiar formatting. The same will. I froze. He didn't pretend not to notice. She asked me to sign it, he said softly. I didn't. I looked at him, waiting. I didn't want it to be true, he said, voice thin. But now, I am starting to believe you. I reached into the pocket. The will was creased, smudged, tucked like a secret no one wanted to carry. You deserve to know, he said, and you deserve more than this. I nodded, throat too tight to answer. The page felt heavier than it should have. I locked the copy in my bag, sat on the bed next to Noah and texted Isaac. The will exists. One signature short. Isaac replied in under a minute. I'll get you a strategy. Delilah started this fight. I'm finishing it. Legally. I suggested the checkups during lunch. Calmly, no drama, just two elderly parents and a daughter with a practical suggestion. We should schedule regular appointments, I said. It's basic prevention. Delilah didn't even let me finish. You're overreacting again. They're fine. Her voice wrapped around the room like static, loud, constant, unnecessary. Eleanor didn't argue. She placed her hand over mine lightly. I think Delilah's right, she said. She's been here. She sees us. I froze, not because it surprised me, because it confirmed everything. So caring meant nothing. Proximity meant everything. Gerald didn't look up. Noah looked at me. That evening I folded towels while Noah sat on the floor, arranging socks by color. Some people mistake loud for loyal, I said, mostly to myself. He nodded, then got up and made me a cup of cocoa from the powdery packet I kept in my bag. Later, after he went to bed, I paced. I thought about the signature, the erased will, the fake concern. I thought about all the times I'd shown up only to be told I hadn't. I showed them stability, I muttered. She showed up. That was enough. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Annalise? This is Valerie, from Dr. Hamilton's office. I used to see your parents. I sat down slowly. I thought you should know. A few months ago, Delilah canceled Eleanor's annual checkup, told us they weren't interested anymore. She also called to stop Gerald's blood work, said they'd simplify things. My mouth dried. I wasn't sure what was happening back then, but now, it doesn't feel right. It never did, I said, my voice even. Thank you, Valerie. I saved the voicemail, uploaded it twice, labeled it intent_obstruction_Valerie. Then I forwarded it to Isaac. Subject line, pattern of interference, health access. His reply came fast. This helps build intent. Keep documenting. I opened a new folder, named it Phase 2. They don't want truth, I said aloud. They want a villain. I wouldn't give them one, I'd give them the law. The next afternoon, as I passed the dining room, I heard Delilah through the door. Once she's out of the picture, everything resets. It always does. I didn't push the door open. I didn't ask who she was talking to. I just walked away. She thinks history is her weapon, I thought. I'm about to make it her evidence. The envelope looked official, too crisp, too intentional. It sat on the kitchen counter with my name typed cleanly across the front. When I opened it, I already knew. Delilah doesn't whisper. She signs things, a complaint, filed with the state, allegations of coercion, financial manipulation, abuse of vulnerable elders. The protected parties? My parents. My name wasn't just dragged into the mud, it was nailed to the courthouse bulletin board. Not just my word now, my name. I didn't say anything during breakfast, just passed Eleanor the butter and watched her hands shake as she reached for it. She didn't meet my eyes. She hadn't for days. Isaac called within the hour. "This isn't just about discrediting you," he said. "She's trying to retroactively revoke your legal authority. If it sticks, she can reverse the deed transfer." I know. I'm prepping counterfilings now, but this is about more than the house. I know that too. That afternoon, Gerald wandered into the dining room while I reviewed documents. He looked at the envelope still sitting on the counter. "I thought she'd stop," he said, almost to himself. "She won't," I replied. Eleanor stood nearby, clutching a dish towel like a lifeline. "We just want peace." She didn't realize how loud the quiet felt after a sentence like that. Later, Isaac called again. "I found something," he said. "Her lawyer, Cole Brennan, was suspended 6 years ago for misconduct, elder fraud. It's public record." I blinked. She hired someone with a history of this? "He's not here for justice. He's here for blood money." I didn't reply, just opened the legal packet I'd been compiling. I added Nurse Valerie's voicemail, the audio of Delilah's realtor call, the unsigned will Gerald had refused to sign. I labeled the file, Response Strike. "You wanted war, Delilah," I whispered. "You brought paper to a sword fight." A court date was scheduled for Monday. That night, I scanned the entire file again and uploaded it to 3 different drives. Printed 2 backup copies, mailed one to my office in Austin. Noah watched me from the table, holding his cup of milk like it was something sacred. "Are you scared?" he asked. I looked up, smiled. Not anymore. The courthouse smelled like bleach and sweat. My heels clicked like declarations across the tile floor. I walked past her before she saw me. She was standing with Brennan, whispering something that made his lip curl. When she turned, she smiled like a movie star who forgot her lines. "Still playing lawyer?" she asked. I didn't slow. "No, today I'm the truth. You should try it." And I kept walking. The ruling was in my favor. The judge barely needed an hour to dismiss the entire complaint. My documentation, the nurse's voicemail, the realtor audio, all of it laid bare what they were too proud or too frightened to admit themselves. Gerald squeezed my hand outside the courthouse. It was the first time he'd done that in years. Delilah stormed off with her lawyer, her heels clicking across the tile like a tantrum she hadn't earned. Eleanor stayed behind. She looked at me once, blinked, and turned away. She didn't lose. She surrendered to silence. Later that week, she stepped into the guest room where I was folding the last of my clothes. She didn't knock. She didn't sit. She placed a family photo face down on the dresser. The frame was old. I remembered taking that picture. I'd been 13. I waited. "Why didn't you say something when it mattered?" My voice was steady. She smoothed her blouse, looked past me. "You're strong. You don't need me." I nodded. "I don't. Not anymore." And that was it. No apology, no regret, just the resignation of a woman who'd chosen the wrong child too many times and now didn't know how to choose at all. That afternoon, I helped Gerald into the passenger seat for his doctor's appointment. He moved slowly, but he was lighter somehow. "You were right," he said as I buckled him in. "About her. About all of it." "It doesn't feel like winning." "That's because you're not like her." Noah rode in the back, quiet, watching, absorbing. Back in Austin, I hung a new photo in the hallway. Just me and Noah, on our porch, smiling like we'd been free for years, not weeks. I printed one for Gerald. He texted back a thumbs-up emoji, and that's a real home. Eleanor never called. Sometimes healing doesn't come from the people who broke you. Sometimes it wraps itself around the scar and holds tight anyway. Noah placed his science fair trophy next to my old law degree on the hallway shelf. His grin was wide, proud. "You think Grandpa will like it?" I nodded. "He'll love it." The next day, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name written in soft, familiar script. I opened it slowly. "I think I finally understand what I lost." That was the first line. I didn't read the second. I slipped it back into the envelope and tucked it inside the kitchen drawer. Not hidden, not burned, just closed. Some silences don't need answers, only endings. Some endings don't echo. They whisper, and sometimes what isn't said weighs more than anything ever spoken. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence can protect, but it can also destroy. When we let fear keep us quiet, we hand power to the wrong people. And when we finally speak, not out of rage but out of clarity, we don't just reclaim our voice, we reclaim our worth. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't need their permission to walk away. Sometimes walking away is the most honest form of self-respect. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed too long hoping someone would change? What did it cost you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit close to home. Or tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know where these stories are reaching hearts. And if you didn't like the video, that's okay too. Tell me why. Let's talk about it. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about your own boundaries, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because the next story, it might be yours.